In a previous video, I asked the question of whether one could become a vampire. In this video, I'm going to examine why someone would actively choose to become a vampire. Some vampires have no choice in the matter, but as I discussed in my previous video, one can actually choose to become a vampire through either adopting a lifestyle or through magical practice. Before we get into that, please take a moment to like and share the video and subscribe to the channel. This tells the algorithm that you like these videos and helps more people see my content. Now to the topic at hand. Why would someone choose to become a vampire? In the case of a lifestyle vampire, that's pretty easy to answer. They like the aesthetic or the archetype and choose to dress and act the part, like cosplay taken to another level. Since I'm not talking about becoming a vampire like the ones in fiction or myth, if you want to emulate Lestat or Dracula, then this is going to be your best bet. It's when we get to the magical vampire that the question becomes more complicated. If you ask any born or awakened vampire, they'll tell you that the hunger is a tremendous pain to deal with. Most will tell you that there are very few upsides to being a vampire, and even those small benefits are not really worth the hassle of having to feed. Keeping all of this in mind, why would someone choose to follow a vampiric path if they were not obligated to by circumstance? Why would a magical practitioner choose to use vampiric techniques as a part of their spiritual journey? The shorter answer is power. The longer answer is immortality. Let me explain. A single person has only so much life force energy to utilize. There are techniques to cultivate life force, but even then, one person can only generate so much. A magical practitioner may choose to use vampiric feeding techniques in order to gain even more life force energy to use in their magical workings. This isn't really a strange concept when viewed through the lens of group magical ritual, as each person involved is directing their own energy toward the goal of the ritual, multiplying the energy. Magical vampires can do group workings as well, but whether solitary or in a group, having extra energy to use is a benefit. This, of course, has ethical considerations depending on how these vampires are coming across this extra life force energy, but that perhaps deserves its own discussion. Now for the big one, immortality. Getting it out of the way, I do not mean physical immortality. I am of the opinion that life can be extended through esoteric techniques, including vampiric techniques, but I do not believe that any amount of vampirism will grant you physical immortality. That being said, there is another kind of immortality, and it requires a little bit of a history lesson. Throughout the literature of the Western occult revival that began in the late 1800s, we find references to the astral body or the body of light. These are both terms for a subtle energy body that exists within or overlays our physical body. Some writers and traditions break this subtle body down into even more parts such as etheric, astral, mental, etc., but for simplicity, I'll just refer to it as the subtle body. The general idea is that whenever you are practicing astral projection, having an out-of-body experience, or even dreaming, your subtle body has separated from your physical body and is out roaming the higher or inner planes of reality. While the physical body is alive, there is always a connection, sometimes called the silver cord. This is like an umbilical cord or tether that maintains the connection between physical body and subtle body. The theory goes that when the physical body dies, this silver cord is severed and the subtle body is truly freed from all constraints. The problem is that without the physical body to supply life force energy, the subtle body will begin to fade, disperse, or evaporate. This is where immortality re-enters our discussion. It is the belief of groups like the Temple of the Vampire and the Ordo Strigoi V that by learning the techniques of astral travel and vampiric feeding, one can keep the subtle body energized indefinitely by feeding on life force, thus staving off the second death and essentially allowing for immortality of the persona or individual consciousness. Do not return to source, do not go into the light, do not reincarnate, that sort of thing. That's all well and good, sure, but what's the point of being what amounts to a ghost? Well, the belief in these various schools of thought is that through continuing to keep the subtle body alive, and therefore keeping the ego or persona intact, one will eventually be able to gather enough life force energy and utilize enough willpower to once again interact with the physical world if they wish. Taken to the extreme, this could even mean making the subtle body dense enough to be seen by the living or to move physical objects. There are different flavors of this belief, but the goal of them all is immortality in a way that can once again put them in a place to influence the physical world. This is survival of the self beyond physical death. This is not the same as spiritual immortality of the soul. I'm not claiming that any of this is possible beyond being able to feed on life force in the out-of-body state, and there are still a few questions I have about the process, but this is essentially the ultimate goal of one that seeks to become an undead vampire through magical means. Please don't take this as my endorsement of engaging in vampiric practices for personal immortality. The end sounds pretty great depending on your thoughts about death and the afterlife, but consider that you still need to practice vampirism to reach this end goal, and that is a treacherous path that will challenge your convictions, your spirituality, and your morality. A great many people that are born or awaken vampires see their need to feed as an affliction. By choosing the path of the magical vampire, you are choosing to feed and therefore taking all of the associated moral and ethical weight onto yourself, as well as any dependency the act itself may produce. I can only speculate on whether any artificial dependency is reversible, but there is precedent to look at. Acquired vampirism is a phenomenon observed when a donor or victim of an energy vampire has their system overtaxed to the point where they themselves begin to draw energy from those around them to replenish their own life force. This is not a true turning because these people generally recover completely when they are no longer subject to being fed upon. It follows that a magical practitioner that feeds to fuel their work rather than out of need should eventually return to normal if they cease feeding, but that's not something I can say for sure. Having examined all of this, why choose to become a vampire? Many people seeking out the vampire community or the vampire identity do so as a way to escape their circumstances. They see the vampire as a symbol of power, something untouchable and capable of exerting their will on the world without constraint. Many seekers feel powerless in their own lives and think that becoming a vampire will solve their problems. These are the same motivations that draw people toward magic, witchcraft, and specifically left-hand practices. Combining vampiric techniques with the left-hand goal of personal apotheosis is a recipe for self-destruction if undertaken without deep introspection and strong discipline. Move forward at your own peril. Hopefully this short essay has clarified a few of the reasons why someone may choose to become a vampire. I am sure there are more motivations than what I've discussed here, but when I examine the question for myself, the pursuit of power and immortality are really the only things in my mind that could even come close to being worth the need to feed. If you're still with me, thank you for watching until the end. Take care, and I'll see you next time.